it's Hope at Crafty Hope, and welcome. It is week 17 of hashtag Crafty Hope prompts, and it is time for my prompt project. As you can see, I've pulled out my Dylusions journal. I think I'm just going to go simple and work in here, and I say simple, but I do struggle with this because it is such a large format. I tend to just do maybe one page and over into the next. The double spread's too much for me. I like my small formats. If you're new to my Crafty Hope prompts, basically each week on Monday I am pulling 3 prompts from a jar. It was a list of 156 prompts, and altering a playing card with those prompts, adding the prompts to one side and just altering the whole card with those prompts, as well as other things. I have opened this up for anybody else that wants to play along. You are welcome to use my prompts. You can build your own prompt deck. You can do an art journal page. You can pull your own prompts. You can just play along however you want. And even though I'm on week 17, it doesn't matter. Start now. Use what inspires you from this project and go with it. Just make sure you use the hashtag Crafty Hope prompts, and if you can, tag me and make sure you follow me and all of those things. I really enjoy seeing what y'all come up with these prompts. I am running a bit behind this week. It's been a week, y'all. It's been a real crazy week, so that's why I'm keeping it simple. I'm hoping to tear through this and hopefully have this up in time for you. If it's not up in time, I do apologize. I'm doing everything I can. So, the prompts this week are metallic paint, border stamp, and botanical. I really love those. This card was beautiful, and I'm struggling to try to figure out how to kind of up that because I love this card so much. So, for metallic paint, I have pulled out those same Liquitex basics I talked about on Monday, along with some metallic watercolors. These are the Art Philosophy ones. They're very nice. So, I may use either of those. I've got tons of other metallic paints I might pull out as well. Border stamp, I have the exact same border stamps I had last week. These 3 mounted ones, along with 2 sets of the cling stamps. So that's what I have for border stamp. And then botanical, I'm just gonna, oh, drop something, fly by the seat of my pants with that. And I think I may doodle something because, you know, these were doodles and they worked out great. But if those don't work, I still have those other like Tim Holtz ones I had pulled out before. I might even grab some dried flowers and pull them in if I'm so inclined. So I can see my battery's starting to run low. I'm going to try to keep an eye on it so we don't have any skippage in footage. But yeah, I'm ready to get to it. Let me know below if you have any questions, if any of this isn't clear. But I knew I needed to hop on this and get to it before I let any more of these days get away from me. All right, here we go. So uncharacteristic of me, I am beginning with some stamping. I decided to grab my Distress Oxides in Blueprint Sketch and Peacock Feathers. I love my blues, and a couple of those border stamps, one of my mounted ones and one of the cling ones, and just go ahead and get some marks basically down on my pages. Like I said, I don't tend to like using both pages when I use these Dylusion squares. The largeness of them overwhelm me. So I like to use the right side and maybe bleed over into the left. So that's where I'm going with this. So I will get to some collage here first, but I decided to tackle the border stamp first because it's of the 3 prompts this week, it's the one I like the least. And it really makes me think about why I'm keeping these border stamps in my stash. Do I really use them? Do I want them enough? And I'm going to have to think on that because I'm not sure. When it comes to the end of this, I don't know how I'm feeling about these border stamps. Let me know how you use them, if you found any unique ways to use them besides as just a border. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I did it in my card as well to use them as a general stamp. But yeah, and I love this one. The swirl one I've had for ages and ages. And the bird one I end up not using, I also kind of love. So the mounted ones I kind of want to keep. But the cling ones, I don't know. I don't know. All right. So yeah, I've got some stamping down some colors that I like. I'm going to bring in my collage, so I'm gathering some papers, just a mix of whatever. I kind of am trying to, I wasn't really thinking about it, but I've got like white papers and then some rust-dyed papers. This is a piece of a phone book. How ancient is that? That is rust-dyed. And before, yeah, you can see I started to go ahead and start glue things down, but I was like, I kind of want to blur the edges of these stamps. That is my jam when it comes to the Distress Oxides. I really love how like watercolory they get. So I usually do it with my hand carved stamps, but yeah, I wanted to see how it did with these border stamps. And again, that swirl one that's mounted, I love it. Gets so much of that ink, whereas those cling stamps don't really grab as much ink. And I wasn't sure how well these would blur on that Dylusions paper, but it did great. So since that was all wet, I'm going to go ahead and dry it real quick. I didn't get it super dry. You can still see some of the water floating on parts of the page. And I'm bringing in my Uhu glue stick. You might tell a difference. I've just switched over to a different size of glue stick, the medium sized ones with the blue. I cannot find them. So I've had to order these smaller ones. I don't like the super big ones. They're too big for my hands, but yeah, so it's still an Uhu, which I trust a lot better than some other glue sticks. I don't know why. It works the way I want it to work. And I'm not great with them anyway. But all right, so I put my collage down. I'm trying not to cover up all of my pretty stamping, but I don't want the stamping to be like a big deal. I want that texture for the background. That's all that stamping is intended to be. And I didn't really think about the fact that I was going to have to bring a botanical in there, and maybe I should have used more like garden inspired colors. But this works out. It kind of gives it a sky effect to it. It's got those shades of blue, so it feels kind of like the sky and clouds. And I think that kind of works out in the end. As I was laying down my collage, I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, maybe I could do kind of like an underwater thing and do like a seaweed botanical. I was like, I don't even know how I would do that. So I was like, I'm just gonna leave it and not worry about it. And if I have to cover up all this blue with the collage, then I will. One of the things I was really loving about this were some of the papers I had grabbed, namely that on the bottom right, that handwritten letter there, the paper that's written on is super thin. And then I've got this coffee filter that is rust dyed, and it is also, of course, super thin. And those let some of the stamping show through. You can see when I lay it down there, that coffee filter, you can still see my stamp pretty well through it. So that is kind of awesome. So I'm glad I started with that so that there is something to kind of come through those more transparent pieces of paper. That worked out, yeah, so beautifully. And I mentioned a minute ago that I'm really hoping I do get this up in time. If y'all don't know, I record my prompts and my projects a little bit in advance so that I can make sure y'all get them on Monday and Saturday. And usually my Saturday one gets recorded on like Wednesday. And I'm doing this Friday morning because I've had a week. I really thought I would get stuff done yesterday, but there was a lot of I've got an abscess tooth right now, and I had to go to the dentist and then go to another doctor to get some more medicine. Anyway, it was a day yesterday, so nothing got accomplished. So yeah, I'm really happy I was able to bust this out. It may not be my favorite project, but it came together pretty cool. I got to play with some different things like layering down those stamps first and all of that. So all right, so I decided I didn't like how harsh some of the papers felt on the page. I wanted to kind of push that back and have them integrate a little bit. So I'm using some gesso. This is Prima Marketing's heavy white gesso. And you see I started off with just like a gift card type thing that I scraped around on the page. But I'm going to bring in a paintbrush here to get more exact sides of some of those papers to integrate them just a little bit, and then I'll use the paintbrush again, the gift card again. And I don't know if you can see it here, but I am like almost laying that card flat against the page and not so much using the edge as using the face of the card to scrape it, and it got some really neat texture that way. While I tried that gesso, I realized I wanted a little more brown in this. I knew I needed some more like mark making, and then I don't know, I was feeling brown because of those rustized papers being so dark. I felt like I needed to bring something a little more organic in there. So yeah, I've got my instant coffee that I've reconstituted, and I am just moving around the areas trying to, like I said, you can see where I'm hitting those darker brown parts and pulling that out just to make it feel a little more organic. I'm sorry if y'all can hear in the dog in the background. I don't know, I think my husband's got a package or something coming today, and of course the dog is our doorbell. So she's letting us know. All right, and one of my favorite things is putting that coffee over gesso that's kind of been smeared out. It gives some really great texture, so I made sure I did that in quite a few places. And like I said, I wanted some mark making, so I kept trying to think what I wanted to use, and I didn't want anything that was water soluble. And I started to grab some colored pencils, but out of the corner of my eye, I caught these oil pastels that I think they're from I don't even know if they make this brand. I'll put it below and see if I can find it, but it's something I got at a yard sale, I think. And this blue was really perfect, went exactly with that blueprint sketch. So I thought, yep, we're going to bring that in. And I just am making these little dashes that I like to make because it just adds just a little touch of texture without having to think too hard about it. You get kind of in a rhythm of making it. So, and I love too with oil pastels the way that they become a resist for things. So some of that coffee up there was somehow still a little wet. And when I put that oil pastel through it, it was really kind of neat. So I'm going to go ahead and go with my botanicals. I had been doodling, I don't even know what you would call these. They are botanicals, so they're flower leafy inspired. And I'm using this fine liner bottle that it's 50% airbrush medium and 50% fluid acrylic paint. And it has to be shook up really well, but I'm just kind of doing this sloppy botanical type thing. I don't know what it is. It's like a flower, a thistle or something. I don't know. I was doodling it yesterday while I was sitting and thought, well, this could be neat in my journal page when I get to it. And yeah, and I kept, y'all, as far as my project, I kept trying to think of maybe doing something else. I was like, well, maybe I'll do an assemblage because the metallic goes great with that, and I could frame up maybe some kind of flower theme. But like I said, I was running out of time, so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna get my art journal and play. And that's helped my mental health more than anything, is to not let myself overthink this. All right, so I've gotten those drawn. They are super wet and thick, so it's going to take me a little while, but you're just going to skip ahead. I've got most of it dry, and I decided to come in with those metallic watercolors. And I'm trying to compare the colors with my page and decide what I want to do, and I kind of wanted those to stand out. So I'm going to use that pink. Y'all know I don't tend to use pink, but something about those thistly flowers said, yep, they need to be pink. They need to stand out just a little bit. So I'm going to put the pink metallic watercolor down. And as soon as I get it down here, I'm like, that's a little dark. So I'm going to blot it up. And y'all, it looks like there's nothing there, but when this dries, it kind of pops, and it's weird the way these metallic watercolors dry, that at some angles you don't hardly see it, and then at other angles it's nothing but color. It's super cool. I'm hoping I got the pictures well enough, and I'll have at the end, before the pictures, I'll move the page around a little bit, so hopefully you can see that. So with all of these, I think except for the little arm things on the neck that I've got coming out, I blot up all of this. I'm bringing in just a green to go on the leaves to keep that kind of, naturally organic. So then I'm blotting those up, and then I realized I didn't do those little neck wings. I don't know, what do you want to call them? I don't know why I had to have those on these, but it felt right. So I did it, you know? So I put that down and I forget to blot these up, and it's okay. It adds, that little bit of color I wanted. And I'm going to move my stuff out of the way. And while this is still wet, go ahead and grab a Stabilo All pencil in black. And I'm just going under those neck wings and the leaves. Just a little bit. Yeah, I don't know what else to call those things. It's like the seed pods when they open. I don't know what you would get, the casings maybe. And I realized I didn't do all of them because I didn't do the casing neck wings things on all of them. So I'll come back in and I'm grabbing a tiny paintbrush, and I don't want it super wet because I don't want to pull out any of that wet watercolor. So it's fairly just damp to activate the Stabilo All. Yep. Just to give that a little bit of shadow and make it stand out a touch more, because I've got a lot going on in there in the background and I do want these to be the focal. So while I'm activating it, I'm thinking about what if I'm going to add a sentiment or anything else to this. And you'll see in a second, I'm going to pull out a book. It's one of my thrifted books from my Thrifty Thursday haul this week from the library. And it's a large print book. And it took me forever to find a sentiment. So I'm going to cut a lot of that out, a lot of my struggle. First, I'm going to try this. I think, oh no, I'm going to do some splatter. I decided to add some green splatter in the background just to kind of go with some of that peacock feather green that's back there, but I'm not going to add any of the pink feather because I want that just on the like blooms, whatever those are. All right, so now I'm going to pull out my thrifted book, and I end up pulling out a page, and we'll get to that in a second, and I'm looking it over and finally decide to use the phrase, what was it? You'll see it here in a second. And I wish I had cut it down a little differently than how the pages were, because it's the cooling breath of green shadow. And I wish I had the cooling breath and then of green shadow, but instead it's the cooling breath of green shadow. If you know what I mean, the way I broke it up. So I didn't get real inventive. I was just happy I found a word, because that took me like 5 minutes to find a little sentiment I wanted to use, because that whole section of the book was about gardens and finding flowers and all that, but none of it felt right. So this one finally felt kind of okay. And I will use my Stabilo All to go under it and activate it. And then I am done with week 17 prompt project using those 3 prompts of metallic paint, botanical, and border stamp. Oh, I'm not done. Haha, I decided to bring border stamp in again and get a little more black on here. So I will grab one of these cling stamps. I think it's from Stampabilities or something. And I'll use my my black stays on, and I'm just going to do along the top and then the right edge of the page. Excuse my head and my hair. And I really just wanted to bring a little bit of black in there. And again, like I said, I'm trying to figure out how much I like using border stamps. So this was kind of an experiment for me to decide if I liked it. And I'm kind of about it. Like, I could have inked those edges or put the Stabilo around the edges and been just as happy as I am with this little doodled vine type border stamp. So let me know if, like I said, if you have any inventive ways you use border stamps, or if this is something you would just get rid of, because I don't really need a whole lot more stuff in my stash. This whole prompt project is about me trying to figure out if I like these things, how I would use them, and if I want to keep them. So border stamps may be something I'm not keeping. All right, here is a look at that little bit of metallic in there. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. And if you're playing along, use that hashtag and tag me. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I will see y'all later. Bye.